Very good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another uLaw webinar. Today's topic is about analytics and insights. So we're going to be covering some of the key data elements that you as a legal professional or a law firm or a legal firm are bound to capture through just the process of you running your business. And we're going to talk about how uLawPractice, an online Canadian legal accounting and practice management software company, empowers you with the tools that you need to drive that data, track, measure, and analyze the insights of that data in a simple and comprehensive, at the same time, combined power of the data analytics engine that we provide. Okay, so right at the get-go, I want to ensure that, for housekeeping, kindly use the chat window for any questions that you may have. Today's webinar is not accredited for any CPD hours. Our next CPD session is going to be on the 23rd, but today it's going to be about analytics, all those questions that you wanted to ask in terms of data that can drive business, data that can empower you to be more smart in your decision-making abilities, both for business insight as well as insight in how you manage your business and your clients. Okay. I do want to request all the participants, more like a challenge, that if you are able to use the chat window to provide either one or two questions that if you're given the opportunity to ask about your law firm or your legal firm, what that question is, so that we can use that to answer it at the end of this session when we spare some 10 minutes for Q&A. So I kindly request you to think about what will be those top two questions that you would like to ask, so that you can go ahead and analyze that data, okay? So moving along, just like every other webinar, so does this webinar have an agenda. Every uLaw webinar does have an agenda, and today's agenda, when the data, insight, and analytics, will be talking about the 360-degree view of your business. How does uLaw provide that vision and view of that 360-degree to your business? How do we allow you to analyze the unknown? So there's going to be questions that obviously you're going to ask yourself and you're going to find the answers for, but there are always questions that you really didn't know you had to ask, okay? The ability for us to drive those questions right off the insights that we drive from the data and the transactional data that you provide as just part of using the product is what's going to allow you to ask those unknown. How do you analyze the accounting data? Okay, we're going to talk about how accounting data is that much more important as a legal professional as you continue down the path of, not only measuring your business success, your client information, but how do you manage and measure the ledgers, the trust and general for your business, for your legal business. Once we've covered how uLaw allows you to provide that data in a meaningful way, let's further drill down into the insights into the trust and general ledgers, as well as how do you maximize the use of the analytics engine that comes inbuilt with uLawPractice that allows you to get the insights and the answers for all those top 10, 15 questions that would empower you as not only as a legal professional, but also as a small or a solo entrepreneur. Okay, and our goal at uLawPractice is to empower solo practitioners to have the same power and empowerment, if you will, of the large law firms who can obviously afford either the expensive tools and or the staff or the resources, the manual resources, who can actually do the deeper dive discussions and the deeper dive analytics on behalf of their firm. And a quick housekeeping, kindly do dial into the phone number that's provided, and please do use the chat window to ask your top two questions that you want to ask your law firm today, and we're hoping that we can answer those questions through the uLaw product before the end of this session. Okay? So this is everything that we're going to be covering in our agenda. We're not going to be going through a lot of slides today. My goal for today's session is to set the context, which is really what the analytics is all about, but then use the uLaw product as an example to showcase how you can do that. So here's a quick definition, a Gartner definition of what analytics is. Okay? So Gartner defines the word analytics as analytics leverage data in a particular functional process or an application to enable context-specific insight that is actionable. The point here to note, regardless of what application you use or what functional process it is to enable context-specific insight that is actionable. So not only should the data be available, the data should be available in specific to a context. So is this a contact-related data? Is this an accounting data? Or is this a matter-related data? So what is really the context? Why am I asking this question? What is the context of this answer that I have? But more important is the last word, which is the word of actionable. So it's very important that when you ask those questions, a subliminal aspect to it is, can I improve upon? So is that why I'm asking the question? So can I take an action based on the result or the answers that I derive from that insight? Okay? So we're going to focus on how uLaw empowers you exactly to do this. How do we provide you the data in the context that you're asking the question, but more importantly, the type of insight that we provide that are actionable. A great example, a very common example within all our clients is, let's say you are a legal professional and you deal with trust money. So you have a retainer. Many times our customers do the right thing. They accept the retainer, they docket the time, they invoice the customer, but tend to forget that the last step, the fourth step in making that money is moving that money from your trust account to your general account. Okay? Some customers do it in real life and forget to update the bookkeeping software, which sometimes can lead to reconciliation problems or just issues with catching up with real life. Some clients just don't do it. So the context-specific insight is that there is so much of trust money that's still left, that's pending trust transfer status, still sitting in your trust funds. And what is the actionable aspect to it? The actionable aspect is that now you're able to use that data to help move that amount from your trust money into your general account so that that's the money that you've earned. Okay, so that's a very simple example of the type of context-specific insights that we derive out of the data that you've provided based on the day-to-day transactions that you make happen with the uLaw, leaving it to the most important aspect of an analytics, which is the actionable aspect to it. So let's quickly talk about matter analytics. And before I set the context for what the matter analytics is, I also want to set the context for why are we doing this in the first place? Why do we want to cover analytics? What's the purpose? So we wanted to cover two key purposes of why we think you need to ask those pertinent questions. Why do you need those analytical engines to work for you? Because a big part of uLaw's customer base and a big part of the revolution that's happening within the legal space right through Canada and across the world is the empowerment of the solo practitioner. Okay, you're finding a lot more paralegals and lawyers right across Canada, across Ontario, and some other jurisdictions being empowered, being an entrepreneur and that solopreneur, if you will, and running your own business. And it's not easy when you're by yourself, and it's not easy when you're starting up, regardless of whether you're an entrepreneur, a single legal firm, or if it's a small multi-lawyer, multi-paralegal firm. Okay? Regardless, it's very important that, right from the cost of running your business to the time that you have to run your business, you don't necessarily have all the time to ask all these questions. You don't have the time to reflect on what this business is telling you and the insights that it has to offer, because you're more focused keeping the lights on, getting those transactions done. And when we thought about it as a company that's trying to really disrupt this industry, we thought about how easy would it be, how can we make it easier on our clients to provide tools that can answer those questions without them having to spend a lot of money and without them having to spend a lot of time. So it was as easy as a click of a button to provide all that insight that's required for you to answer so that you can be smarter in your business decision process. That's what we wanted to offer, and that's why we're talking about this today. Okay? One of the most fundamental aspects that law firms do, large law firms, is they are almost able to predict and have predictive analytics based on past data. And that's exactly what we are looking to do too. Based on your past success and failures and the data that it provides, uLaw establishes rules that can give you that insight about how you can conduct your business moving forward. It can help you govern those rules right from the get-go, that even if you're just a startup, just starting off, and if you don't have all much data, by design, you're already set up fundamentally properly to get those answers in the next 3 to 6 months that you're in business. Okay? And the second aspect to analytics is analytics and the data insights can actually help you understand the state of your practice. Okay, in self-introspection, it's very important that in this fast-paced legal business that can sometimes be frustrating and time-consuming, that you take the time to introspect. Introspect in terms of how you're doing as a business. Introspect as how you're doing so that you can improve your business and help improve the health of yourself individually and that of your business. Okay? So the power of the insights and the analytics engine is to provide you with that timely data in a simple, lesser time-consumed fashion. And we just spoke about the example of the corrective measures that you can take. And as I mentioned, pending and aging invoices, pending trust transfers are probably the top perfect examples that I can give you about actionable insights that you could take using the data that you have. For our clients who are just joining in, I do highly encourage you to kindly use the chat window to ask the top 2 questions that you as a legal professional or the data that you want to drive out of your legal firm. And we're happy to answer that and showcase it to you if we can during our Q&A session. So please use the chat window to ask the 1 or 2 top questions that you want to ask your law firm. Here are some of the questions that we think are interesting and are actionable that you as a legal professional should be asking so that you can make yourself better and make those smarter decisions. Okay? Now, if you're in the business of dealing with trust money, you definitely want to ask yourself how much of money were received in trust. This is not only for the hygiene of your business, but this is for a general compliance as well, because this is the types of questions that the Law Society is actually mandating you for you to measure and track. How many withdrawals were made in trust? Okay, what is a trust balance? You probably, if you're in the business of dealing with trust money, you are asking that question already. Okay, but the point is, how easy is it to drive that information out of your practice management software? What was the last trust transaction? Okay, so it gets a little bit more interesting, a little more deeper dive. And some of the questions that you may actually not ask yourself was, how much of that trust transfer that I did went towards my billables or my invoicing? And how much that was a payout for disbursements? Okay, so you probably want to understand, traditionally, do you capture retainers that include disbursements that you're going to be doing out of trust? Is that a good habit? And if it's working for you, then this data is going to give you that actionable insight so that you, moving forward, would make it a practice and make it a part of your retainer agreement to state that you are going to now take disbursements out of your trust as a habit. Okay? So it allows you to make those smarter decisions to improve you as a legal professional and the business owner. So these questions, as easy and as as meaningful as it may seem, has to be asked, has to be actionable. And we're going to continue asking a few more questions. Is there still money sitting in my trust that is yet to be either moved from my trust to general, where I've actually invoiced it, or is there money still sitting in trust unused? Okay. How much of the total service has been invoiced? You always want to understand what your interim bills are, what those cycles are, and work in progress, because you really want to understand how you plan out your week. With time being one of the most critical components of a solo practitioner, these are the types of questions that are going to allow you to stay on top of your matters, stay on top of your work, and have a better plan for things. If you have partial payments, if you are in certain silos of practice, and depending on the type of customers that you're dealing with, it may be a pattern where you're always getting partial payments. Okay? Let me just go back to my client. So a good question to ask is it a repeatable pattern that most of your matters have partial payments done? Is that something that you want to keep considering? Is that something that you want to improve upon? Maybe stress to your clients that you are looking to get the entire payment done, or something that you want to keep in mind, that a certain area of practice kind of leads itself to customers who do provide you partial payments. But the fundamental question to be asked begins here. Okay? How much of balance in trust is the total percentage of the receipts? And a very important question is, when do I call that client to request for more trust funds? Okay, what's that limit that you set yourself to top up those trust funds? Is it when it's completely depleted, or is it when it's a certain dollar amount, or it's a certain percentage of the overall trust amount? So those are the types of decisions, actionable decisions that you can make by asking these questions. And we're going to showcase how easy it is to be able to ask those questions and take those actionable insights. So bottom line, I've been rambling away the last 15 minutes, and the whole point is, as a solo practitioner, ask those pertinent questions. And if time is of essence, and if you've been shying away because you think it's going to take a lot of time to ask those questions and to put together a plan to get the data out of your system, and here comes uLaw to help make that process much more simpler and lesser time consuming. But do ask those questions, and in doing so, asking those tough, complex questions, your legal office, can increase productivity and the overall revenue. That's the bottom line. If you're in business to be profitable. Okay, it's not and if you are here for other bigger purposes, great. But as a business entity, you want to stay afloat and be profitable so that you can continue down that path. Okay. I remind that this webinar, we're trying something new. We highly encourage everyone who's joined us today to ask us through the chat window the top 1 or 2 questions that you think you want the answers for your legal firm, and we're going to try and answer and get those answers for you. In big, bold words, our goal and our mission is to make uLawPractice empower our solo practitioners across our client base and across the legal society to have the empowerment and the power of a large law firm. And how do we do that? Is by investing in the product that can give you those powerful insights out of the data that you actually transact so that you can take those actionable next steps. Okay, that's really the bottom line of this webinar, but we're trying to encourage you and motivate you to ask those questions by giving you some examples of the types of questions that we've learned along the way. And as part of the next half of the demonstration or this particular presentation, we're going to walk you through how uLaw as a product is well designed to capture that data, ask those questions, and empower you to take those next steps to improve upon the answers that you derive. Okay? And again, I think we've spoken about this. The key aspect to this particular slide that I want to highlight is there are many ways in which you can visualize data, right? You could actually have reports. because everybody is different in the way they look at things, in the way they visualize it. There are certain people who actually like graphs. There are certain individuals that like numbers. They like words. So we will try to kind of divvy up our representation of this data as tabular data, because that's easier on the eye. It's straightforward. Pie charts, bar graphs, and we've gone one step further to actually put it to you in very simple English words in a Q&A format. So as part of the presentation of me walking you through uLaw, I'm going to cover how we've taken these insights and visualized it in these different ways. Okay? And we've done that across all different aspects of the practice management tool. Combining with our legal accounting software, now you can have very particular insights, not only about your contacts or your clients, but also about specific to your matter. And you can encompass an individual client across multiple matters. But more importantly, you can then have the overarching accounting and business insights, because we are a legal accounting software and are able to provide you that insight. Okay? And what does it do for you? Reiterating the first point, it provides you with the power of a large law firm. Okay? And why we say that is that it costs a lot of money, either through manual work or otherwise, to deliver the data that's being asked for. And because we've designed it from the get-go for that one purpose, we ensured that we're capturing the data in the right way so that it can answer those questions, and hence it's already available to you at no extra charge. Again, that's empowerment. And the fact that uLaw is in the cloud, it gives you access to that information at any time. So that's a very empowering aspect. You don't have to be in your office to ask those questions. You can pretty much do it at the comfort of your home. Okay? And the bottom line is, in asking those questions, you are having a self-introspection about the health of your business, which fundamentally leads to your personal health. Okay? So in wanting to motivate you to ask questions, not only through this session, but also through your use of any practice management software, and hopefully uLaw at a certain time, these are some of the questions that would hopefully stoke your interest. Okay, so we've got contact level analytics, or questions as well as answers. As I mentioned, matter level, accounting level, and you've got business level as well. Okay, but let me give you some examples. Fee books, source of contact. So beyond the accounting aspects, we are also able to provide you with insights that can lead to your marketing actionable aspects to it. So a source of contact report is a great report that tells you where your leads are coming from. Okay, so that you are now able to make an informed decision about where you want to put your marketing dollars based on the trend that you're capturing. Invoice balances, as I mentioned earlier, is my money sitting left in my trust account, which I should have moved to make my money? Is there a lot of people who have, days of sale has been beyond 30 days, and I need to pick up the phone and, get those clients to pay me? So here are the questions, here are the answers. That allows you to take the actions that you need to do to improve. Work in progress allows you to plan your day and your week ahead. Profit and loss statements allows you to readjust your business, your model, your expenses, so that you can stay profitable. Pro bono, one of the most overlooked aspect of your business is, if you do provide a lot of pro bono, it's very important that you capture that so that you can measure it and so that you can take insight, discover the insights, but also take actionable aspects of it. Either you live with it, knowing that you're going to do so much pro bono, or if you're not happy about it, at least you're able to take a next step. Revenue by area of practice. This is becoming one of the most widely used, data insight. Is every legal professional, has either multiple areas of practice that they focus on, or if it's just a single area of practice, like criminal or small claims or anything like that, they may actually have that across multiple geographical regions. Okay, and if you have that, uLaw could give you the insight to where the money is coming from, so that it can reinforce your vision and what you wanted to accomplish to begin with. Unbilled hours by matter so that you can stay on top of that, make sure that your staff are doing the right thing, or you yourself are doing the right thing to bill those hours by the matter, and you left no stone unturned. You want to reward or make that friendly phone conversation with your clients who are paying you well, keep them happy, have a referral process for those top paying clients, but fundamentally you need to know who they are. And that's where we're here to help. I think that's enough of me talking. I'm going to take a pause here and switch gears to jump into the uLaw product so that I can start highlighting the questions that you can ask. How do you go about it? How do you track the information, data, and then jump into showcasing you all the different insights that we have. And for those who missed out on my initial disclaimer, this particular webinar is not accredited for CPD, but it's purely to talk about the analytics data that you need to ask as a legal professional. So it's important and relevant, but it's just not going to give you CPD hours. Our CPD hour session or webinar would be on the 23rd, or actually it's going to be end of the month, just everything practice management. And for those who don't know who we are a proud Canadian legal accounting and practice management software company, and we would love to see you on our website and register for a no obligation 30-day trial. Okay? So enough being said, let me now jump into my uLaw account. So I'm using a fictitious legal professional, Roger Moore, one of my favorite bonds, who unfortunately did die a few weeks back. So in his honor, this will be the first webinar that I'm doing since then. Again, before I get started, just a quick reminder, please, for everyone who's in this webinar listening in, do use the chat window to ask any questions. Okay? All right, so we spoke about analytics and questions and data at each and every touch point, and how do you go about measuring them and asking those questions. So let me start off by actually looking at one of our contacts. I could actually go down the path of creating a contact and walking you through that, but let me quickly pick a client that I know, and let me look at Dwayne Johnson. So Dwayne Johnson is a fictitious client that I had created as part of my demonstration, and right now you're at the contact level. So if I were to edit the client intake form, if you will, a very important aspect of creating that client, of creating Mr. Dwayne Johnson's information, is to capture how did Mr. Dwayne Johnson get to know Roger Moore. So you as a legal professional, when you do that client intake, whether it's over the phone or whether it's in person or whether it's through your website, you definitely want to capture this information, which is a configurable list of the different sources of that lead. Okay? So it could have been, in this case, was a trade show, and you can actually add more information to it as to what particular trade show it was, but you're basically capturing where you got that lead from. And how is that going to help you? The question is, where are my leads coming from? This is how you captured that data as just part of that transactional way of using a practice management software, and you have either in the form of a report or in the form of a dashboard that question being answered. Okay, so let's answer that question, which is, where do I get my leads from? So let's look at the source of contact report right under the document generation tab. That's going to now give you the options of different ways in which it can answer that question. Okay, so the question is, where do I get my leads from? So what we're asking you is, perfect, we can give you that answer. Tell us, are you looking for your leads by day, but the ones that you've generated today, this week, or do you want it for the month? Do you want this by quarter? Do you want it for the whole year? If you want this for the whole 5 years that you've been using uLaw, you could do that too. And I'm going to just say, for simplicity, tell me my source of contact, which is all my leads where have they got that from for this month? Okay, so in this case, uLaw has generated a report. Now, there's multiple reasons for that. One, it's going to give you that insight so you can quickly look at it and get those answers, but also because it's a Law Society report that the auditors may actually ask you for, so that then it's readily available in a report format that will be easy for them to consume. Okay? So for the month of June, here's a quick graphical representation. As I mentioned, we have 4 ways: graphical, tabular, Q&A, and pie chart. Okay, and within the graphical, we have pie chart and bar chart. And this is a pie chart. So you've got 20% of your clients coming out of trade shows. Another 20% from personal referral, but the top performing lead source for this month is client referral. Okay, so your existing clients have referred you to these new prospects, which is very encouraging because nothing better than a word of mouth client referral lead. Because not only is the quality of that lead high, but you can be the percentage of client referrals closing to an actual client are much more. Okay, so if you see a red in your client referral, then you're doing fantastic. For those who like a tabular view of it, you've got the source of contact, you've got account. Okay, so overall percentage divvied up with 3, 4, 5, 6. You've got in total 6 leads so far this month, with the client referrals being the top performing. And by any chance, because a lead source is really not a mandatory field, because sometimes they might, you don't have an answer for that. But if at that particular time they didn't realize where they came from, or you forgot to ask them that question, you can always go back. So you look at this, we give you the insight. Which contact did you not give us the lead source for? Right? How important is that? So when you're looking to drive insight and intelligence out of data, a very important aspect is to look at the quality of that data. Because if you don't have a good quality data, then the answer, it's what you put in is what you get out. So now let's go and make this quality of this data better. Here's the answer. Who are those sources, who are those leads for our clients for whom I don't have the answer for? Harry Pottery, fantastic. Let me go make that actionable next step. I've asked a question. I've got the answer. Now I'm going to take the next step, which is what the analytics talks about. To enable context-specific insight that is actionable. So let's take that action. Let me go into Harry Pottery. As you can see, I don't have a source of contact, and you just got to know that it was through, again, maybe a client referral. Take that insight, actionable next step. Now if I were to regenerate that information, ask that same question now. Generate the source of contact for the month of June. You are now going to get a different angle to the answer that it provides, which is your client referral just became 50% from the 40%, and that went up by 3. Okay? This is kind of the same flow. We're going to continue down the path across, and contacts is a much simpler component of the overall legal accounting practice management aspect, but equally important, right? Because if you can understand where your leads are coming from, that's going to keep you happy, to keep you a pipeline going, so you can start generating those leads and converting them into clients. Okay, now let's move on to some interesting next questions and answers that we can get. A simple question. How many active files do I have today? Okay, because if you're a busy professional, you're probably having a lot of active, closed, you're doing that, especially in certain silos of practice, you always want to ask yourself that question. What matters should I spend more time on? How do I prioritize my time? It's always best to prioritize on active files. To do that, you need to mark them as active files so it's easier to focus your attention. So I can either generate a report or I can just quickly look at the dashboard that gives me the insight. Work in progress. So I want to know for this month, I can do an insight that tells me total work in progress unbilled hours. So I have close to an hour and 10 minutes of unbilled hours. Any flat fees in my work in progress? No. What was the oldest unbilled matter? Okay, so you have this matter show versus Dina. It hasn't been billed, and it's an active matter. Something that for you to ponder upon. The most recent unbilled matter. So you have Mr. Bill's DUI case that hasn't been billed. Okay? We spoke about the Q&A format. So we've looked at the graphical, the tabular. We would look at the bar graphs as well. But here's a Q&A format that gives you in simple English the top 5 questions that are relevant in the context. Again, the context is very important. In the context of what we're trying to ask, what is the total unbilled hours? In English, you have that answer right under details. Okay, so almost in each and every aspect of uLaw, you have the relevant analytics, insights, and the way to capture that data, making it much more meaningful and easy to get those answers. Now let's look at some more complex questions and let's get those answers answered. Let me jump now into matters. As you can imagine, there's quite a few permutations and combinations of questions that you may ask yourself. Okay? How old is this matter? How much of trust money is still sitting in funds that I need to move? Okay? So for the purposes of this demonstration, let me just quickly look at the question mark. The question mark really gives you the analytics that are related to this matter that have a financial touch point. What it tells you is that you raised an invoice. The question is, how many invoices have you raised? 1. What actions can I take? I know that it was raised, and this was the invoice number. That's the date. Let's say the client came back to you and said, you know what, I lost that particular invoice. You are now able to take that action, which is reprint that invoice again. What other questions can you ask yourself? Is there a balance? And there seems to be a general balance. Have I moved all my money from trust to general? Looks like it, because you put in $1,000 into trust and you withdrawn all $1,000. So you've done a good job of ensuring that you moved all your trust money. There's still a balance of $452, purely based on the general ledger. And is there any money that the client owes me for the work that I've done in this matter? And the quick answer is yes, because this red gives you the action that you can take. What do? Okay. Now what do? Is obviously you make a phone call. Right? So you go to contacts. So you've got the questions. You've got the answers. The guy owes you money. And you can do that right from our phone app. You can search for Show Me on your uLaw app on your phone, and you can give him a call. And you're going to call him, and you're going to take that client payment. You're going to say, sorry, sir, there's that $452 that you owe us. It tells you exactly the $452. That's a partial payment. You can take that in. Let's say he paid you by a credit card. You're going to take that action. Give him a receipt. And move on with life. Move on to your next matter. Move on to making your lives easier. Go home early. Okay? If you want a consolidated list of every individual who owes you money, instead of having to go at it at a matter level, then we have the insights there. So let's quickly take a quick deviation just to answer that question. The question is, I don't want to go in matter by matter to know who's owing me what. I just wanted to know at a single snapshot. Fantastic. Right here, we have this invoice balance report. As of today, it basically tells you every individual for every matter who owes you money. Maybe this is a report that you keep handy. It's your best friend, and you're always generating it so that your days of sale, that you're always recovering the revenue that your clients need to pay you. Okay? The realized revenue, if you will. You've got your recognized revenue, just the potentials to earn. You've got your realized revenue, which is really money in the bank. Okay. Here are some answers right here too. The client with the oldest unpaid invoice. So this guy has not paid you for over a year. Obviously, this is a test data, but it's interesting that we've captured that. Which individual owes you the highest amount? Maybe that's the question. The answer, Mr. Tom Rodney. Is there a trust balance, and if so, which account or matter has the highest trust balance on it? Captain Adam Brown. He has about $7,000 sitting in trust. That's not a good thing. And which individual client owes you general payment? Sir Tom Rodney owes you, I don't know for why, $21,000. But here's a list of every client and the amount that he owes you in some shape or form. And if you only see client owes and you don't see a pending trust transfer, such as Ms. Jasmine, you know that she owes you $244.50. This is a report that you use to get one consolidated view, and you obviously go ahead and take the next step, which is that action you need to take based on the data and the insight provided to be more smarter and profitable and productive. Jasmine, take that payment right here. So if you have an assistant who's making those phone calls, he or she is looking at this information and making those calls. Even if you put in, because the fact that you have multiple matters, it allows you to do that. For the purposes of this demo, let me just go ahead and put in the amount owed. Same concept, apply it as a check, move on. Okay? Now going back to matters. So that's one question. It's really the insight about the analytics of that matter. Now let's look at some of the legal or law society questions. Questions such as, what does your ledger look like? Okay, and are you representing it the right way? You've got the retainer coming in. Retainer, you moved that money. In fact, it was a refund, and that's why it was in and out. Zero balance. What is your trust balance on this particular matter? Zero. You have the answer. General ledger. The client owing me anything? Balance owed. Zero. Okay? Again, you have it in Q&A format. In this case, we have close to 26 questions that we've asked on your behalf and provided you with an answer for it. Okay? Because it's important that you can ask these questions, because when we looked at context, there were only about 8 or 10. Because it's all within the context of asking the right questions. Because there was no purpose to ask 26 questions for that contact. Whereas there is so much of data at a matter level that allows us to give you those different questions and permutations and combinations. And some of these questions you may have not known. So these are some of the unknowns we spoke about. Okay? What are the total number of time dockets in this matter? Maybe you don't need to ask that question, but we still have it because it's relevant. Because if it's a certain area of practice and you have 30 time dockets, maybe the inference is you don't want to deal with such matters because there's a lot of time and effort involved. Okay? Quick analytics. What is the status, invoice status? It's pending. So that's the answer. What the question is, what is the status of my matter? It's invoice pending. What do I do? I'm now, because the fact that it's invoice pending, there's only one invoice raised, that's the amount. Let's go ahead and raise that invoice, right? So the question is, do I actually need to raise an invoice? The answer is yes. It is a pending status. What do? Take an action. Raise the invoice. Yeah? It's not an invoice pending status anymore. And please do ask those questions in the chat window. We have another 15 minutes left in this webinar, and I'd really like to spend and make this more interactive, meaningful, as we all come together to learn more. You learn a lot more when we're in a community of like-minded people asking pertinent questions. I want to know a summary of this entire matter, everything that's happened. Here's your answer. It's in the form of a report, but it's an answer nevertheless. If you want to look at your different timelines, again, depending on who you are and your style of representation of the data, you really want to know what's happened at different timelines. So when did this start? So visual representation. It started early or late May, and it's moving along. Okay, this visual representation of the timeline that this matter has gone through. For that particular matter, you can also generate trust ledger statements, settlement accounts, different questions, different answers, different formats. Moving along, so we focused on the context, the types of questions, types of answers, types of actions. We looked at matters, questions, answers, very important actions such as raising an invoice, especially moving money from trust to general. And then we jumped into accounts really just to show you the bigger picture of all the clients that owe you money through the invoice balance. There's a lot more questions that you can ask because this is where we're combining the business accounting aspect of your life. So the fact that we are a legal accounting and practice management software combined, we're able to give you the insights that you otherwise would have to combine if you're using two different softwares to accomplish that. Okay? And you can still do it. It's just more time consuming. You want to look at your journals. There's always a question each report asks and an answer that it has ready. But very important, let me look at a profit and loss statement. So if you're the type of personality that looks at numbers at a report, here it is. You want to know your monthly profit and loss statement because a lot of people are either educated or through experience know how to read a report and quickly diagnose through a report than the visual indications. There are others who are fine-tuned to look at graphics to get that answer. So here's one style of answering the questions, which is how profitable or is there a loss for this month of running my business? Where's the money coming from this month? So this month I've got money coming from family law, real estate, small claims, all over the place. Okay? How much of money am I getting from these areas? Are there any expenses? Because obviously your profit and loss is combining your revenue and your expense, and it's telling you whether there are ones over the above. The total income for this month, close to $10,000, and man, there's only $400 of expense. Obviously, this is a very profitable month. Okay? If this is, if this was only really true. Going to those who are more graphical in the way they visualize information, you've got a very good spread of the revenue pie chart. We have our bar graphs for those who look at it that way. We then do the same thing for your expenses. And we tell you the overall revenue and miscellaneous. So that was accounts, document generation, and we looked at profit and loss. Now we looked at pro bono. It's very important that you capture the pro bono at the right time. So where do you capture it? It's basically a docket, right? A pro bono docket is at a matter level. So let me add a pro bono docket to begin with, because if it's by habit, we capture it, and hence you're eligible to ask that question. So let me say for this particular matter, show us as Dina, I've done a document review. I'm going to say document review, pro bono, so that this shows up in the invoice and your client knows that you're a good Samaritan here. Now let's mark this or toggle this particular docket as a pro bono docket. But what's the other information that you need to give us? How much of free hours did you give this guy? Right? So that's exactly the duration. So what was the duration that you spent? Which otherwise you would have billed. If it was not a pro bono docket, you would have billed this individual 5 hours because that's the effort you put in. For whatever reason, you're giving this individual 5 hours of pro bono, which even at about $150 is $750 worth of money. But how do you know that? How do you know that 3 months down the line? You want to ask that question. Perfect. So that's the first step. Here's the answer. Here's how to get the answer. Document generation, other, pro bono report for this month. And you can do that by yearly, quarterly, right? Again, these are report level visualizations. We will, hopefully in the next 2 minutes, I can show you where you can get a consensus of all this in a very graphical way. Awesome. So here's Mr. Show Me. That document review, you just spent 5 hours. Wow. Already, it's about 6.5 hours of pro bono. What does that mean? Show Me has over 76% of the overall pro bono that month. Okay? He's taken the most advantage of your Good Samaritanship, followed by Mr. Reverend, and then my Mr. Drake. And that's the spread. And what does this report answer? We're even actually indicating the question you probably should have asked, which is, what is the distribution of the total pro bono by hour by client? Who are the top clients that are getting a pro bono service? And in June, how is your billable spread? It's still looking okay because in June, out of the hours that you've billed, or docketed rather, 55% are still billable, but this is not good because almost 45% of the dockets that you raised in the month of June are pro bono. Okay, the number of hours. That's the ratio. Okay, so it's got to be better than this. That's the answer, and the insight is you can do better. But it's bottom line, it's important that you ask that question. Okay? So we've looked at some examples at contact level of how you can ask questions, get them answered. Matter level, why it's important to ask those questions, get them answered. And we spoke about the power of the law firm. Okay? So here's the analytics engine that captures data as you transact in uLaw, as you put in your dockets, as you accept invoices, as you provide pro bonos. And it's sitting there capturing all that data, and the engine can now provide you with deep dive insights. Instead of a report, if you really want to look at your revenue insight, you can be sitting in your home, sipping a cup of coffee, and really clicking that button saying, fantastic, the month of June is a very profitable month. That's $10,000 in income. Highest revenue, second highest revenue. Now let's do something interesting. You want to compare it. You want to compare your revenue against this month because it's great against this quarter. Okay? So your quarter seems equally better. Maybe I'm not big with numbers. For me, it's all about visualization. Let me look at my fee book. Where is my money coming from? Which area of practice is working well? This month, tabular by value, by bar graph, or by pie chart, I realize almost 40% of my revenue this month came from POA HTA. How do I compare it with my quarter or my year? Even better, how do I compare it with any date range month? Let me compare it with last year. How powerful was that? How much long time would it take if you were to do this manually, or if you were not to have this level of sophistication? So last year, same month, 22% of your revenue came from family law. Where's your POA? Like it's a very small component was from POA. There it is, 5%. So if you're someone who's focusing on POA, you have done fantastically well to move from 5% of revenue that you made last year in this area of practice to 40%. You do the same thing with your expense. Just a click of a button. What's this month look like? What's my quarterly look like? Okay, so this month, expense on client account was the major expense, which is almost 61%. There's this entire quarter. So this month is, it's good because these are recoverable expenses. So I think I've painted the picture. With just a few more minutes left, I want to focus the time now on the Q&A, and would sincerely appreciate your feedback and ask any questions that you may have about the top one or two questions that you would like to ask your law firm. A quick question I think that I'd like to answer. This is available as a recorded webinar that we would send you. And we're very happy and delighted to announce that we've recently been nominated by the Canadian Law Magazine under the time, and we mentioned this, under Matter Management and Time Management Software Solution for an award. So it's the Canadian Law Magazine Award. And we would love your support if you can vote for us. That makes us look good. Thank you very much. And I sincerely hope that you would ask us any questions that you may have. And please use the chat window to do so. Okay, got our first question. Thank you very much. The question is, how do I know the spread of all the lawyers that are actually using and the time that they've spent this particular month? Very good question. I think the question is about the timesheet. It's about the spread of individual time spent that particular month. Okay. For which we'll go in the calendar. We'll look at your timesheet. But more important, let me look at the timesheet by employee. Let me look at it this month. Okay? So the question is a fantastic question. Is how do I know, who's doing what work? And sometimes the answers to certain questions may be derived through a combination of data insights, right? So if you look at Mr. Roger Moore, this is all the work that he's done for this particular month. So there's really not a great example of, let me do it the same thing by employee, and I can do it actually by client summary too. As I said, sometimes it's a combination of data. So I can actually either do it by timesheet, or I can do it by client service. I will do it for this quarter. Okay, we've got our next question. How am I doing on my discount? So quick question is, that's an interesting question. Let me finish this first and then jump into the discount answer. Okay. This is more encompassing, as you could see. Perfect. So you've got the different individual providers, or the lawyers, or the legal professionals, their estimated hours, and their billable hours. Okay. So Rachel Clayton, Alex, Roger Moore obviously has a big part of the chunk. Estimated to be 145 and done better because his billable hours were 145. Okay. Leanne, Janet. Perfect. So the next question was, I want to know how much of discount I've been providing. Good question. Very granular question in it. So to do that, let's go to accounts, document generation, other discounts write-off. And the click of a button would basically give you a discount book, if you will, of all the discounts that you provided. Obviously, there it is. You provided $25 to one Mr. Drake Rummeray this month. If I were to do it by quarter, let's do it again. In fact, I'll do one step further. I'll do it by the year. Started this year till now. Okay. So the two questions that, again, we thank you for asking. One is, how do I look at the spread of the work done by my employees? So we looked at the timesheet, and it gave you a breakdown as well as an overarching summary. And the next question that we had is really wanting to know all the discounts that I've provided over a period of term. So I'm going to look from the first of the year till now. You provided almost $1,488 discount. This gives you, again, a graphical representation of that. In that, this is more interesting. You tend to give a lot more discount under small claims. Okay? That's a deeper insight, or a sub-question, if you will, within that main question. And you have a habit of giving 20%, or the next big one was the Wilson estate, and even break down that $1,400 by area of practice. Small claims, you've provided almost $728.50. A bar graph, and all the individual clients who amounted for that. Okay? I hope that answered that question, but that was a great question. Okay? Again, don't be shy. Please ask us any questions that you may want to ask your law firm, or something that you're thinking about as a solo practitioner. Okay. Got one more question. We looked at revenue and expense. How do I know how much of revenue I've made for a particular time period? Okay, that's a good question. I will recover that particular topic. So there's a couple of ways in which you can answer that question. The question really is, how much of revenue are you generating? One way of doing that is through your fee book chart by category, which is really nothing but the revenue. Okay? Or you can look at the overall revenue. If you're just looking at a high-level insight, you can look at the revenue insight, which is basically going to tell you how much of money you made that month. But if you want a breakdown of that same 9,816 by category as to where you're making that money, oops, sorry. So it's the same answer. So it's revenue uLaw InSights 9,816, but that 9,816 is broken down with 40% of it coming from POA. That's the idea. The tabular one where it gives you the small claims being 565, real estate, all that. And another way of generating that is through a report format under accounts. We have a separate report called revenue, and you can generate, and it would give you that same data, the same answer of the 9,816, but in a different format. So as I said, we want to consider the different types of individuals and how they consume data. So here is the breakdown of that 9,816 of the revenue that you made in June divided by the different areas of practice. Some people like to generate reports, others don't. So we've kind of given the best of both worlds. All right, so if there are any more questions, again, we highly encourage you to send us any questions so that we can answer those. Last question, how do I do it by an individual client? I think the question is if someone were to call you and then they are asking you for that fee book. Correct me if I'm wrong. The same report. So let's look at Jasmine. And you look at our question mark. You can either do a uLaw Insight that's going to give you the individual revenue, or if you go to document generation, into the client fee book, this gives you the particular insight. Okay? That gives you by the individual. So then you further break down the small claims by the individuals. We actually have that insight also by clients. You could look at fee book chart by client for that particular month, with that giving you a breakdown of the individual clients. Okay? Hope that answered that question. Okay. Well, I thank you very much for joining us today at this webinar. I hope this was an informational session, and we look forward to you helping us with our survey as well as promoting us toward the votes, if you can, for our Canadian Law Magazine Award. And if there are any further questions that you have asked your law firm and you need answers, we're happy to answer them as a follow-up to this webinar. Sincerely, thank you one more time, and this would be available to you in a couple of days as a recorded webinar. Have yourself a great weekend.